Blue Bloods, the graphic novel, is 112 pages long. An interesting tidbit about Blue Bloods, the graphic novel, was that it was not originally a graphic novel. It was adapted by Robert Venditti. But the original author, Melissa de la Cruz, wrote it to simply be a novel. The graphic novel seems to flow very nicely in its page breaks. They usually space it out every 35 pages or so to do each of the acts. There is a solid story act. They started with Skylar. Skylar Von Halen is the main character of the story. She's a loner, but she's happy being a loner. It's based in New York City, and it starts off that when she's 15, her life is dramatically changed. A mosaic of blue veins appears on her arms, and she begins to have memories of another time and place. Now the story really begins to pick up. It really starts to go into its climax when a classmate is found dead at a nightclub. Everyone thinks that she was murdered and that it might have also been an accident. And there's one character in particular whose name is Jack Force, who actually knows the truth. And you don't start finding out about the truth until you get farther into the story. But in the beginning, this is how they started off. They really set the stage. There's little black boxes of information scattered with each new character, and it gives you a little tidbit of information, what their name is, maybe some of their interests. Skylar, dresses really grungy, and she doesn't care. There's another character who's a friend of hers that buys expensive clothes that look like they were bought from a discounted store. So this story really has a nice arc to it. It goes back to the beginning when you have that flashback, and when Skylar turns 15, she starts having these memories of the past. So the flashback gets tied in very nicely to the story. To the characters having a solid character arc, I definitely would say there is change. Skylar definitely does not stay in her loner stage. She breaks free because she wants to solve the mystery of who she is. She cannot be a loner anymore if she wants to find out who her true identity is. Other observations that I had while reading Blue Bloods, the graphic novel, that coincide what we've learned throughout these last 3 weeks in this course would have to be that I noticed that the words bubbles did not overwhelm me in this graphic novel. The dialogue was so well placed throughout this story that I didn't feel like I was being spoon-fed line after line. The images were doing more of the talking than the dialogue was. And I found it very refreshing, because if I were to actually sit down and read Melissa's novel after reading this graphic novel, I honestly don't think I would enjoy it. Because the graphics that this graphic novel give me make it seem like I am in the story. They make it seem like the actions and illustrations are happening in front of me. I really enjoyed that they didn't bog this story down with an excessive amount of dialogue. This isn't a film, this isn't television, this isn't a novel. This is something that the graphic should really be the main header of this entire story. I like how they showed each climaxing moment, how we learned that Skylar might actually be a vampire, that she's not just a normal human being, because she is the main character. This story is centered around her and what happens to her. She is broken out of the shell. She becomes more daring. She wears more daring ensembles. It's not all frumpy and baggy and dark. It's very appealing to the eye. It's almost like, look at me, look what I have on. And in contrast, her old character really didn't want to be noticed. She wanted to blend in. She was a loner. So I love how they tie in the character development throughout this story. How Jack and his sister are battling each other. His sister wants to live her own life and wants to play by her own rules. I mean, which is really playing by no rules at all. Jack is bored of life and he just wants things to kind of go back to the way they were. And I really enjoy how they put all of this conflict together without making it seem too overwhelming. Because when you have all of this conflict and all of these characters coinciding with the flashbacks, it can be a little too much. But Robert took Melissa's novel and wrote it in such a beautiful way that it coincided with the illustrations that it almost felt like it was just the right size. It was just the right amount of dialogue. And the images really did do the talking. When you have the image when Skylar is putting her finger in her mouth and she's seeing if she has fangs, if she has this tooth that is sharp enough to pierce her skin and make her bleed. You don't need dialogue to say what is happening. The artist was able to take that and show us that yes, indeed, Skylar is more than what we thought she was. And that was one of our instructors' kind of, I wouldn't say helpful hints that he gave us, but definitely a rule he told us in week 3 was do not bog down with dialogue. You know, this is supposed to be a story that an artist can create drawings from that you don't necessarily need dialogue for. So this story did a wonderful job at having a clear beginning, middle, and end, and the illustrations were beautifully formatted in this story. Each page flowed to the next one. I really enjoyed reading this graphic novel, and I hope that you guys will read it as well and enjoy it just as much as I did.